unwind after a hectic day from work. That erupted into a huge fight with my parents. In the end, he apologized and said that he would not bother me. Then onwards, he used to come only once a month on a weekend, which I was okay with, and made attempts to make small talk with Jenna, which was still fine by me as it never was anything beyond that. Things went on this way for some time, and in 2009, I proposed to her and we announced our engagement to the entire family. My parents were happy for me, but my brother just shook my hand and left the small party I'd organized for this occasion. After that, I didn't see him for a couple of weeks. We got married in 2010. During that, I noted my brother had A+1 and he told us that he was dating her. I'll call her Kate for this story. I thought maybe now he could finally move past whatever feelings he had for Jenny and focus on his own life. They moved real fast too, getting married almost 9 months later in 2011. Our marriage was going great. We had our first daughter Alice in 2011 and the second one Sarah in 2013. However, my brother's marriage did not progress as they hoped to, and they separated in 2012. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Kate messaged me that Henry was obsessed with Jenny and that was the biggest reason for their separation. I apologized to her and wished her the best. I also talked to Jenny and asked her about her interactions with Kate, and she told me that Kate always was a bit cold and distant towards her from the get-go. I decided to confront my brother in front of my family and asked him why is he destroying his life because of his obsession with my wife. He was blindsided with that question and denied everything. We had a massive argument that basically ended with me forgiving my brother and telling him that he is no longer welcome in my house. Both my parents and Jenny talked to me and convinced me that no matter what, he was still family. So for everyone's sake, I decided to be amicable. It was then that it felt like he was genuinely working on himself and we went on with our lives. Fast forward to 2015, I can still recall that day vividly. It was the 25th July and I was running multiple errands. My wife took both our kids to see their grandparents. It was sometime after lunch that I got a call from my father, telling me to come to their home, and had a lot of anger in his tone. As soon as I entered, I noticed a lot of tension in the air. My wife was a crying mess and my parents were trying to console her. Some of my extended family members were there as well. I asked what happened, only to be hit by being called the SA person word not gonna say that to avoid Retta's wrath, from my parents. I was shocked and confused. They claimed that a party I went to a couple of weeks back, I had SA'd a girl, and then texted her to do not tell anyone about it, otherwise there will be consequences. I had known this girl Amanda for some time. We went to high school together and she was a part of the larger friends group that I occasionally hanged out with. As per her, after the party, which was at a club, I followed her to her car and did it there. She shared screenshots of the alleged conversation with my wife and told her this entire tale. My father slapped me hard and my parents told me that they never want to see my face again. Jenny was angry and she said that we're done. I tried to convince all of them that I never did that, but fell on deaf ears. I was basically kicked out from their house and told that neither Jenny nor the kids would be returning and my father would be coming over to take their stuff to my apartment. When my father came, I begged and pleaded, but he basically packed a couple of bags and told me never ever to contact them again and that he would personally hand me to the cops if that happened. By evening, Henry had shared the screenshots and all the details to our extended family group on WhatsApp, from where I was unanimously kicked out. The next few days, I even had people from my friend group calling me to say they were disgusted with me and never to contact them again. I was a mess during that time. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even properly work. My boss also heard the rumors going around but couldn't do much until he saw some police action against me. He advised me that I leave the organization on my own to keep my record intact and that he would ensure that I don't have to even serve my notice period. I tried to argue the case, but he told me that if the cops come knocking on my door, he would be kicked out anyways, and in such a scenario and the gravity of the case meant I won't get severance and my record will be tarnished. I grudgingly agreed to his ask and I left the organization in the next few days. In mid-August, while I was still wallowing in my misery, I received 2 documents from the court. One was a letter of disownment and the other were divorce papers. I was quite drunk, but I went to my parents' place anyways, only for my brother to come and give me a black eye and tell me that I was disgraced to the family and it was good that I was disowned. I had blood coming out of my face by the time he was done with me and barely able to stand. My parents and my wife looked at me from afar but did nothing. I managed to get myself up after some time, a crying mess, and realized that I had lost everything and everyone I knew. I stayed holed up in my apartment for the duration of the divorce. It went as amicably as it could. As I was jobless, plus my now ex-parents stated they would pay for the child, I didn't have to pay child support or any alimony. By January 2016 I was divorced, but trying to pick up the pieces that was once my life was hard. During this time, I also felt like confronting Amanda, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it could have made matters worse for me due to the women-centric laws in my country meant one phone call and I would be looking at 5 to 6 years in jail. In February 2016, I got into a major accident and spent a good part of 5 weeks in recovery. The staff told me that they contacted my emergency number, which was still Jenny at that point, and she hung up and no one showed. Once I recovered, I realized that I had spent through a good part of my savings and I needed to get back on my feet, if not for anything else, to have a roof over my head. However, I realized that I won't be able to do anything in the place I was at. So sold all my furniture, paid my remaining dues for the rented accommodation and decided to start from scratch in a different place. I moved to a city 2 hours away and tried to get a job, for some time but to no avail. I also used to drink myself silly and thoughts of unaliving myself were recurring. Waking up after seeing a nightmare to a cold sweat almost became a norm. Update. My jealous brother framed me for SA, causing my wife to leave me and marry him, and everyone in the family believed him, so I went no contact with everyone. But 8 years later, my family found out the truth about the situation, and now they are all begging me to give them another chance. For 4 months, this went by, after which I ran into an old acquaintance, James, from college. He was the quiet kid during that time and didn't really talk to anyone, but seeing him after so many years was odd, as he spotted me out from the crowd and called my name. We greeted each other and talked about our lives for a bit. I told him I was in the city looking for a job. He told me he had just quit and was planning on setting up a management consulting firm of his own. He then invited me to a drink later on, where after a lot of talking about our professional lives, he offered me an opportunity to work with him, as he needed a couple of people who knew their stuff. At this point I thought I needed to work my mind off these thoughts. So I agreed, but I told him I want to meet him and his team and talk to them before we moved forward. 2 days later, he introduced me to another guy, Derek, and told me that currently it will be just the 3 of us going forward. I shook hands with Derek and told them that before they proceeded further, I had something to say. I then proceeded to spill the beans on everything that had happened to me during that time and how I was disowned and divorced because of it, with the tears coming through in between. James and Derek told me that they felt sorry for me, but also told me that if there was no criminal record on my person, then there would be no issue. I stated that police never came to my house, and they were relieved. James did mention that to be on the safer side, he's going to ask someone to run a full background check, and I understood his position and agreed. During this time I was living in a run-down place that I rented to minimize my expenses. I waited patiently for 2 weeks but was still looking for jobs in other places in case things didn't work out. 2 weeks later, James called me and we met up later that day. He stated my record is clean of any SA, and welcomed me to the team. After that I threw myself to my work and started therapy sessions. On the advice of Derek, I also joined a gym and vented a lot of my frustration on the punching bag and went from an average 70 kilograms to a buff 98 kilograms. Derek and I became gym brothers, and I basically looked at him as an older brother, as he was essentially Henry's age. By end of 2018, I had a good amount of control back in my life, the consulting firm took off and the money rolled in. I rented out a nice apartment in a decent neighborhood. The Band-Aid also came off to an extent, and I realized I needed to do some necessary steps to move on. I went to a court horse and changed my last name officially on record. I adopted the last name of Derek after his and parents' go ahead. They saw me as a nice guy and involved me in a lot of their family functions, including me being the best man for Derek's wedding, so this was a way of thanking them as well. I tried dating a bit, but it never worked out for me due to my emotional issues, till I started dating Kim, 28, in 2019. She was half Korean and half Italian. I met her at a coffee place where I picked up my coffee and on occasion sat there. She used to work behind the counter. We saw each other only for the order, but once when Derek and I were there and he noticed that she was constantly looking at me, he told me that I should ask her out. I approached a bit hesitant and asked her out for drinks later that day. We had a nice date and she said that she hoped we can see each other again. I knew that this was going to go in the similar way my other dates went, which was basically I told them about my past and they ran off, and I never blamed any of them. However, the second time I took Kim for lunch, I decided to tell her before she moved ahead I wanted to let her know of my past so she could make an informed choice. It was like she was blindsided. I told her that I never had and never could think about doing that to anyone, and I am still struggling to move on from the aftermath, and that she needs to know what she's getting into before we even think of going for any further dates. A couple of days later I got a call from Kim and she told me she wants to meet up. We met at the same coffee place where she worked and she told me that she trusts me and said that wants to give it a shot. At this point I was skeptical, and even cried a bit, because I couldn't believe that I could even find a bit of normalcy restored in my life. We went out for a few dates and really enjoyed each other's company, and it felt that I was finally able to start healing. I went on my first vacation after years with her to Europe and had a great time overall. When the C virus hit in 2020, we remained in contact throughout over the phone and FaceTime. When things regained some level of normalcy in the latter half, she asked if she could move in with me and I agreed. She was let go from her coffee shop and was trying her luck with job hunting. She was an amazing cook, and that's when I suggested that maybe she can try and set up a place and get into the food business. By mid-2021, and with the financial backing of her parents, she had a cloud kitchen setup which basically delivered food to the nearby areas. Both our lives were doing great. I still had a lot of emotional issues though. I no longer had thoughts of offing myself, but the nightmares still continued occasionally. Kim announced in February 2023 that she was pregnant, and a range of mixed emotions came over me, from being overjoyed to starting all over again to crying out for the loss of what I once had. I was all over the place. Kim comforted me and we fell asleep in each other's arms. A couple of days later I proposed to her and she was overjoyed. It felt like everything was finally moving to a point where I can have some semblance of peace with my life. We were set to be married, and all the preparations were in full swing for my wedding in mid-June this year. I am sorry for the long post, but I needed to put out all the information possible for you to know what a roller coaster things have been for me. At the end of May, I get a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, I could hear someone cry. She said, "Hi, it's Amanda." I instantly recognized that voice, and cut the call, trying to hold back my anger. Kim was with me and saw my face and came over concerned. I was trying to hold back my mix of tears and anger and told her who it was. When the call came in again, this time Kim picked up the phone and put it on speaker. There was a guy on the other side and he explained that he was Amanda's fiancé and she wanted to come clean over what she said back then. She got on the phone and kept apologizing over and over again and kept crying continuously. Kim did most of the talking as I became a sobbing mess, not sure what I wanted to do. So Kim said that they will call back. She immediately called Derek over, who listened to everything patiently as Kim explained what had happened. He gave me a hug and advised that we should set up a meeting at a lawyer's place with her confession so that it could help out in case of any future possible issues. I called up my lawyer and explained everything to him. He said he'll set up a meeting in his office and gave me a time and date. I called Amanda and told her that she needs to come over to my lawyer's office and we'll discuss it there. 3 days later we met up at his office. Amanda looked tired, with her expressions. Her fiancé was the only person who was with her. My lawyer set up the meeting with a camera to record the entire meeting. I asked him to mediate and I asked Kim to come with me. We sat across the room and she started to explain in detail what had happened back then. A lot of things were said and discussed, but here's the crux of it. She and my brother were dating back in 2015, but no one knew. He was the person behind the entire SA plan. She went along because she really loved him and would do anything for him. He got a new phone and stole my profile pic from my WhatsApp number back then, and they used it to create the fake screenshots by chatting back and forth with Amanda. I went from crying to filled with rage. I can honestly say that if it wasn't for Kim, I might have been charged. Kim was pretty furious and worked up as well, partially due to the pregnancy, and she tore Amanda a new one with her verbal lashes. Though my lawyer tried to maintain things civil, it was clear that Kim was pretty pissed off. She went further to tell her fiancé, if he still marries this human then he deserves what's coming to him. Fighting back anger and tears, I asked them, why are they coming out and telling it to me now? Her fiancé, Mark, came forward and explained. He said that they were pretty drunk a couple of weeks back and she blurted out how she helped an ex destroy a marriage. That stuck with him, and after asking non-stop and pushing her, she finally came clean to him. It was then that he pushed her to own up to her mistakes if she wants peace in her life. Apparently after she helped Henry, he started becoming cold and distant with her and eventually broke off 6 months later. At that point she felt terrible but was too scared to come clean and spent a lot of time in therapy trying to work through her issues. Final update. My jealous brother framed me for SA, causing my wife to leave me and marry him, and everyone in the family believed him, so I went no contact with everyone. But 8 years later, my family found out the truth about the situation and now they are all begging me to give them another chance. After everything was laid out on the table, my lawyer stepped in and said, let's take a 30-minute break and meet back again. Amanda and Mark stepped out, and our lawyer discussed that if I want he can go after her and my brother for defamation. The evidence available is more than enough for me to do what I want. I was feeling a lot of rage, but I decided I didn't want this to spoil the wedding, and whatever I wanted to do would have to wait till after everything was done. I told Amanda that I will be in contact with her, but for now I don't want her telling anyone else. I didn't want any drama from my ex-family to impact my wedding. After that meeting, Kim hugged me and told that she was right in trusting her guts and now she feels like a weight had lifted off her shoulders. I shared her sentiment. We had a small wedding with both James and Derek being the best man and a 3-week-long honeymoon covering Europe. It was an amazing time for both of us. Thankfully I was able to work through what I had heard, and Derek too suggested that I should put this on the back of my mind. It didn't spoil the honeymoon too much, though the nightmares were coming in more frequently than before during that time, and Kim was always there to support me. I also had a discussion with my therapist who told me that I will need to confront my ex-family sooner or later, if not for anything else, then for closure. After thinking a lot about all that had happened, I decided to reach out to Amanda in July and told her what she needed to do. I told her that I will be taking legal action based on her statement, but if she wants to not be screwed financially she needed to follow what I told her next. She needed to talk to Jenny alone and explain to her everything she told us back in the lawyer's office. She was crying through while listening to me and told me that Mark left her. I told her that I wish I could feel sorry for her but I don't, then stated that karma hits everyone hard. It hit her and now it's coming for my brother. A couple of days later I receive a text. It was from Jenny. In spite of being blocked, I had been sending her birthday wishes and wishes on both our daughter's birthday as well as holiday greetings over text. This was the first message I received in 8 years. She basically asked if we could talk. I didn't want to be alone when I was having this conversation, so I told her I will call her in a few hours. I reached home and was with Kim when the call took place. I could immediately hear Jenny sobbing uncontrollably for a while before she told me how sorry she was and how terrible she is feeling currently. I was somehow able to maintain my composure all this time. I told her that it hurt terribly knowing that she thought so little of me that she so easily fell into Henry's trap. I asked her about my girls. They said they are doing well, and then asked when did she meet Amanda. She said she met her 2 days ago. It took a lot of time to process how wrong she was, and quickly she moved away from me. She immediately brought it to the attention of my ex-parents and they were just as stunned. They all wanted to contact me, but she said she wants to connect first and apologize. I told her what she had done was beyond hurtful. I asked what had happened to the golden child. She stated that he's been kicked out of the house. I chuckled a bit. She told me she had married Henry a year after the divorce was finalized, as he was the one who supported her through this. And suddenly it all made sense. Looks like he never gotten over her. She told me that she has a daughter with him too. After the discussions, I basically told her what is going to happen. And a detail of what I wanted. I want her to reach out to all my former extended family so that they are aware what a posse is. Secondly, I am only looking to co-parent only my 2 girls, and that I do not have any intention to reconcile with her beyond what it takes to me having a relationship with my daughters. And third, I will text her the date and time when I want to meet my ex-parents, and I want to meet them in person. After that I just hugged Kim, Knowing she was pregnant and her mood would have been all over the place, I kept my emotions in check, but I guess she was crying for the both of us and we fell asleep on the bed. When I woke up next morning, my phone was shut off, and when I put it on charge, I noticed the barrage of messages that were coming through. I had over 50 missed calls and hundreds of messages. I was also added to the family group message where every single one of them were apologizing. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from some of the friends who were apologizing for what had happened and how they jumped the gun on everything. The only reply I gave was to the family group that since I was disowned almost 8 years back, I was an outsider in this group and wished to remain so. Whether I forgive them or not would happen on my terms and my timeline and not theirs. I further told them not to add me back here, and left the group. Some of the family members tried to call me out by messaging me that they were disappointed in my reaction, and I shut them down, saying they were not in a position to judge me after being so quick to assume what I did and to not contact me again unless I contact them first. A couple of weeks later, I called up Jenny and told her I want her to bring my girls over the weekend so I could meet them properly. Kim, being as adamant and feisty as she is, said she wants to meet her stepdaughters as well. We argued a lot. It was mostly me telling her that since she was pregnant she needs to take care of herself, but the Asian in her was pretty adamant, so I gave in. We met at a public park. Jenny looked a bit disheveled but looked like she put an effort to look as good as possible in this meeting. There I saw Alice and Sarah for the first time in 8 years. They had grown so much, the only memories I had of them were in my phone, as I was pretty blocked from all the socials and everywhere else. Jenny came crying, trying to hug me, and I put both my hands up front to decline. I then introduced her to Kim as my wife, and she broke down a sobbing mess in the park. Kim came forward to comfort her and we sat down in a place close by. I grabbed both my girls and cried out. My girls were never told about me until recently and they were pretty conflicted as they only knew Henry as their father, but seeing me suddenly brought out some emotions. There was a lot of crying and talking. By the evening, we exchanged what had happened in our lives. She told me that she got married to Henry a year after that. He took care of her for the first few years. After that, things settled down. He still couldn't grow his landscaping business to a point where it's profitable, and then COVID basically forced him to shut shop. His parents were now dipping into their savings in an attempt to make ends meet, and he never bothered to start something again despite his parents telling him to. She said she's filing for divorce from Henry and she can't stand the sight of him. I told her she's free to do what she wants and it has nothing to do with me. I told her some details moving forward. Essentially, I wanted Alice and Sarah to attend family therapy sessions with me over going forward so we can heal. They've been robbed of their real father and it was time to make it right, and I want to be a part of their lives. I also wanted them to be with me and Kim over the weekends, but I told her that would have to wait as we had a kid of our own coming and I want to put my full energy into that for now. Lastly, she said that my parents wanted to reach out to me. I corrected her and said they were anything but my parents. I still had the letter of disownment they sent out along with the divorce papers and I had nothing to do with them. But both her and Kim stated that it would help me get closure from them. So I agreed. I told her that I would tell her when I want to meet them and where I want to meet them. I booked her a hotel and told her that I wanted her to be in this city for the night and I want some more time with my girls, with tomorrow being Sunday. We spent that Sunday together as well, but this time I took them to the sights and around the city and we really enjoyed the time we had. Before leaving, both of them gave me a warm hug and I told them I will see them next week. I told her that she doesn't need to drive the girls for the family therapy sessions, and I will come over to them. I got a good recommendation from my therapist for that city and we had a good first introductory sessions, but the therapist spelled it out that sooner or later they will need to know what my ex-brother did, and I told her they will in due time. She suggested I write it out here and get a few outside perspective to my situation as well. I can honestly say if it wasn't for Derek pushing me I might not have made it to the point I have. Which is what brings me to opening this forum to you. What should I do from here? I plan to confront my ex-parents sooner or later, and despite of me calling them their ex, I still have emotions and feelings for them. I'm not sure if that makes sense. How do I deal with Henry? I don't think I ever want to see his face ever again, but do I go after him and ruin him with a defamation suit, knowing fully well that he is daughter from my ex as well and anything I do to him might impact her?